If you've watched this channel any more than about 5 times, you've probably figured out that I like productivity. I respect productivity. And when I was young, I was productive. Now, obviously, we've talked about a lot of things that increase productivity and some things that reduce productivity and why productivity matters. But what I want to talk about today is something that people don't often think of as an obstacle to productivity, and that is blame, assigning blame. And the flip side, or to kind of flesh that out, because you may be thinking, what do you mean? That if we can, within our own hearts and minds, shift away from blaming, and I'm not talking about shifting away from holding accountable, but shifting away from pointless, corrosive blaming and embracing within ourselves the habit of taking responsibility, of owning all of the things that we do, then our productivity is going to go up, our peace of mind is going to increase, and maybe, just maybe, you will be able to affect the culture where you're working, where your community is, if that culture is already too heavily weighted towards the blame game. So if you've been in construction any time at all, you've probably recognized that that industry tends to be obsessed with who they can blame, who we can blame, who can be blamed for the things that don't make the money, for the mistakes, right? Well, the first commercial job that I ever had, the first commercial company that I worked for, was a great company. Heavy hitters, good guys. But after about 2 weeks, I realized, whoa, these guys are a little obsessed with assigning blame. Oh, well, maybe that's just to increase accountability and sort of reduce mistakes and sort of penalize the things that they don't want. So I thought, well, I'll just sort of learn from it. But as time went on and I stayed there, I realized, wait a minute, this company culture is obsessed with blame. From the very top, from the main office, blame inside the main office, just outside the main office on the superintendents and the project managers, right on down to the foreman, and even within the working partnerships and trios and the smaller subset crews on a bigger job. The whole thing about pointing the finger of blame was endemic. And it put a bad taste in my mouth. Now, I understand, I'm not so naive that I think that when someone makes a costly mistake, they shouldn't be blamed. What I'm saying is that after responsibility has been assigned, and if a consequence needs to happen, then stop it with the blame game. It becomes leverage in interpersonal relationships that, from my perspective, seems like the crab syndrome. You're familiar with the crab syndrome? That if you have a bucket of live crabs and they're squirming and they're flailing and they're unhappy, and one of them happens to get a claw or a leg up over the top of the bucket and begins to do a one-arm pull-up and get himself up out of there, you know what happens, right? The crabs that see him pulling himself out, breaking free, reach up and grab him by the back end and suck him back down into the melee. It began to feel like that was what was going on at this great company in terms of what they built and the quality and they were a solid company. So, after a while, partially because of that, and primarily because I wanted to find a way to make more money, I left them. I was back with them for a short period of time, but the culture of blame was part of what ran me off. All right, so stepping aside from the specific company culture, just generally, and maybe especially if we let that grow in our own homes, blame occupies way too much space in our minds. The person we're blaming, what's the metaphor, is living rent-free in our minds, or the event is living rent-free in our minds. Blame is closely related to resentment, right? In fact, resentment sort of generates and grows in connection with blame. And whose fault is it? There are few things that suck more productivity out of us than that. And you say, well, what do you mean, Wadsworth? When you're working, you can manipulate, you can run the backhoe, you can make the cuts, you can run the nail gun, you can you can roll the trusses, you can rod the concrete even if you blame somebody. Yes, but in your idle hours, when you're driving back and forth, when you should be planning what it is you're doing either on the job or in your personal life, instead we kind of circle the drain with the blame, the resentment, the blame, particularly if there's some aspect to the blame or if you're receiving blame that's just not fair. Now contrast that with the impulse to take ownership. Blame grows when the person that's being blamed is resisting, maybe proclaiming innocence or evidencing frustration at receiving accountability that maybe they don't think they deserve. On the other hand, if you've made a mistake and you throw your hand up and say, yep, that was me, and I'm sorry and it won't happen again, it diffuses the whole situation, or it can, in a healthy environment. And if it's an unhealthy environment and you're owning your mistakes, yep, that was me. I did that. I cut that beam too short. I ran over that compactor. I backed my truck into the corner of the job shack. Whatever it is, that was me. If you got to fire me, but let's not waste time. I don't want to hear any more about this. Let me know right now if this is a firing offense or if this is something we can get past. Man, can you see how in a rational world, in a healthy company culture, that might not remove a penalty, but it's darn sure going to increase the way you are respected and your self-respect. No matter what happens or how it goes, you'll always know, yeah, you know what, it was on them because I owned it. Now, inasmuch as this is similar to resentment and therefore forgiveness, the whole aspect of taking responsibility for our actions can do more to make a generally healthy environment in our lives than almost anything else. Even if it's something, especially perhaps. So here's the example. Those of you who have children, if you have a child who, and some are prone to lying, who are prone to avoiding responsibility at all costs, what do we all tell them? We tell them, if you tell me the truth, you're not going to be in trouble, or at least you won't be in the same kind of trouble as if you tell me a lie. All right, you're not really worried about whether or not that child tells you the truth about what happened that time. You're worried about how to shape that child into a fully functional human, right? I mean, that's what we are trying to teach our children when we drill down on, you'll never be in as much trouble if you tell me the truth as you will be if you tell me in a lie. Because one of the prime goals for, well, everybody I've ever met as a parent is to raise children that have integrity. You know what makes that really hard? You know what makes that impossible? Is if that child ever sees us refuse to own our mistakes. It completely undercuts and debases anything we ever successfully taught them about taking responsibility for their actions. Now let's back up, and what are the practical reasons for taking ownership and making it a habit of taking ownership? One of them is, if you grow up, if you advance in your life with a mentality of, I bet I can lie my way out of this, you will never be as good at anything that you do as if you go through life with a mentality of, if this goes sideways, I'm taking ownership. Can you see how that mindset is going to unavoidably teach you to bring your whole mentality to solving the problems you have to solve? Because in your heart, you know you're not going to try to lie your way out of it. You're going to take accountability. Can you see that the commitment within yourself, if you learn to love and desire the impulse to take accountability, to be honest with those around you and with yourself, can you see how it will make integrity generally your North Star more than anything anybody else will tell you? Can you see how the habit of taking responsibility for your actions, when you find a healthy work environment, is going to get you raises, is going to increase your responsibility. A coherent organization is only going to advance the people who will take responsibility. Now, there are plenty of incoherent organizations where the opposite thing seems to happen, and I know that we're going to get comments about that. But I hope you'll post the comments also about the places you've been that have recognized that accountability in an employee is a prime characteristic for advancement. So obviously, one of the concerns about being truthful and upfront and accountable when we make a mistake is, what will become of me? They will fire me. Well, you know what? They're certainly not going to take you out and shoot you at sunrise. And if they do take you out and shoot you, they're not going to eat you. I learned that from Bill Cannell. He put in acoustic ceilings. I worked with him on the Las Vegas airport. Prince of a guy. They're not going to take you out and shoot you. And if they do take you out and shoot you, they're not going to eat you. But the fact is, there are worse things than being fired from a job that's already a dead end, or even if it's not a dead end, is a toxic work environment. So you don't have to fear that. If you've made yourself productive, there's going to be someone else that's going to be super happy to pick you up. As we wind this down, one of the maybe overlooked aspects or behaviors associated with radical accountability is when something goes sideways, especially if it's your fault, and even if it's not your fault, go to the person who's responsible for cleaning up the mess, who's responsible with dealing with the fallout, and say, listen, either A, that's my fault, or B, what could I have done differently to have been part of a better outcome? This is not brown-nosing, my friends. This is not shameless virtue signaling. This, depending on what your history is and what they know about you, this is an honest desire to increase your education in whatever it is that you're doing. Because when you learn what you could have done differently in the case where your decision was wrong, and you learn what you could have done differently in the case where someone else's decision was wrong, can you see how that increases your productivity and increases your self-respect? I'm not talking about vanity. Vanity and arrogance is not even related to self-respect. Yeah. We know ourselves. We know the things in our past that make us want to learn to shave in the dark because looking in the mirror is too painful. And regardless of whether or not we have, and we all have things that we wish we would have done differently, if we learn to take accountability for the things we do that could have been done differently, they are going to plague us less. They will plague us less. And the more we can decrease the number of things that plague us, that live rent-free in our brain, that cause us to second-guess the things that we're doing in this moment, that cause us to not waste any ambition on how can I lie my way out of this, the happier we're going to be. And there's a thing where letting your light shine, even in environments that are not all that bright, not all that brightly lit, can do good things that we could never have anticipated. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.